So really quickly, I'll kind of show you quick and dirty what I do. This one, obviously, this is my personal build that I'm still working on. But what I do is I start off making the side cuts and then the cross cut. So I leave the bottom for last, so I can figure out how how long I want it. So what I do is I use the top of the holes right here for the charging pins as my kind of my line. That's pretty much where I'll run a some painter's tape along as straight as I can get it, meeting up at the top of this hole. So that gives me the side cuts. I do it on both sides, and then I decide where I want the cross cuts. So obviously it on these two I did a higher one for this commission and then for my personal one, but then you can also do the ones where it's lower and it gives you the full glass eye and it comes lower, and so you just run another painter's tape across the top. Again, make it as tight as straight as possible. Lay down the tape multiple times if you need to. If you need to lift it back up, do it again. And then once you're good with the tape, and again the tape goes on the top, not on the bottom of the line the way I do it. And then again it goes on the top of the cut. So then I take a Sharpie and I run it along the tape, and it'll bleed over because you're gonna cut that part out anyway. It doesn't matter. I run the Sharpie along that, and then once it's dry, take the tape back off, and you have a perfect line that you're gonna cut with the Dremel. And obviously just go really, really slow and steady. And then I come back through with, a hand file and smooth them out as much as possible. I'll also take, a Dremel buffer wheel, or cutting wheel or standing drum or whatever it's called, if I need to do that as well. And then that's the basic window. And then, I decide what cuts I want. This, I wanted to kind of do something a little different on mine here, so I just did a line. And then you also have to be cognizant of the fact that this hole is going to be here. So, my cut, since I went high on the top cut, it actually comes really, really, really close, to cutting through there. So if you do a standard cut, it'll come down, it won't even matter with this. It'll actually be lower. And then you can do the angled cuts or whatever you want. And then once you're good with that, then you can mount it back on and then decide how low, you want it here. And on this one, I did a very low curve. Like I didn't do a very pronounced curve. It's a very subtle curve. But then, there's others where it's going to be more of a pronounced curve. So, it depends. You can eyeball this if you want, or what I've done as well on more precision builds is I've taken, I've laid down my painter's tape on like a cutting board or something, like a mat that it's not going to really stick to very well. Lay it down, and then I trace a curve, an oval, using a cup or some Tupperware, whatever, a curve that I like the size of. I'll take it back off and I'll put that tape over the bottom here, and then that'll give me a good shape to cut off of. And then the graph paper I use to get, let me see if I can get this. I use that to get the holes as symmetric as possible. Because I did do one shroud way when I very first started that I screwed up really bad. The holes were way up here on this side and way down here on this side, and I just ended up having to scrap it. So you take, after you do your cuts, the chamber box obviously isn't on yet, the control box I mean, and then you take a piece of graph paper, cut it to size, and I tape it on the inside of here, overlap it, and then tape it on the inside of here. So it's flush here, the graph is up, and then you can judge based on the graph where you want your holes. Doesn't need to be on an intersection. It could be midway between lines, whatever. But then, make a dot, every like 2 lines, or, line and a half, however much you want them spaced. And then that'll give you the exact dimensions to match on the other side, you know, however many boxes or however far it is off this line. And then you know, take your punch with the graph paper on, punch, you know, on those marks, and it'll go through the graph paper. Take the graph paper off, you'll have your pilot holes, and then, you know, go to town with drilling them. That's about it. That's my process. That's how I do it. That's how I've always done it. It's always worked for me. I never really had any issues. There's different techniques out there, but you know, that's what works for me. So let me know if you have any questions.